Good morning from Trinity Episcopal Church in Boonville. We hope you'll enjoy our spiritual offering of music and the sermon of Mother Linda Logan for the 14th Sunday after Pentecost.
Tis the gift to be simple, tis the gift to be free, tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. Praise God for 'tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. Turn will be our delight, till we come round right.
In the name of the one holy God, Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer. Amen. Images of loss are what the gospel gives us this morning. A sheep that strays off into the wilderness, a coin that tumbles to the floor and rolls off into the darkness. And in each case, the person who experiences the loss puts what he or she has at risk to go in search of it. These little parables of Jesus, grouped one after the other in Luke, emphasize the value of what is lost, and they come in answer to a complaint that Jesus welcomes sinners and even eats with them. You know how Jesus replies to people. Rather than answer a charge directly, in many cases he spins a story. And that is an artful device, for in spinning his stories, he catches his attacker's interest, and in spinning them the way he does, he leaves the application up to the persons who are listening. But in every case, it is the context that sets the story in motion. In this case, Jesus is on the road to Jerusalem, the place where his challenge to the authorities will come to its final crisis. He is teaching the people who walk with him and those he encounters along the way. What he is teaching is the nature of God's kingdom. And what he is teaching, which is so controversial, is that the composition of that kingdom is not what people think. We need to remember the setting behind Luke's story. Luke's gospel was written at the time when Judaism and Christianity were formally splitting, sometime after the year 70 and before the year 100. The temple that was the center of Jewish worship has been destroyed, torn down and carried away, stone by stone, so it could never be rebuilt. The scrolls containing the sacred scriptures have been burned, and the temple authorities have been massacred along with their families, so that there could be no one to whom these inherited positions could pass. Thousands of other Jews who lived in Jerusalem have also been killed. Now, this was in Jerusalem, and Luke's gospel might have been written in Antioch or in Rome, and the destruction of the temple might have taken place as many as 25 or 30 years before Luke wrote. But with the temple gone, the sacrificial worship of the Jewish faith had come to an end. And with the priests and scribes of the temple gone, the authorities over religious practice were gone as well. In Judaism, what stepped into the void were the Pharisees, a sect that was focused on the keeping of the law. Now, the Pharisees get a lot of bad press in the Christian scriptures, but it may be that their actual focus wasn't all that different from that of Jesus. What each was concerned with was how to live the law of God. But what we're dealing with in the Christian scriptures is writing which is setting up an argument against another position. The Pharisees were the religious authorities in Judaism after the destruction of the temple. So the Pharisees are the representatives of the Judaism from which Christianity is parting at the time of the writing of Luke. The question the people were dealing with in the period immediately following the destruction of the temple and throughout the period when Christianity and Judaism were separating was, how are we going to live when we are losing life as we knew it? The answer of the Pharisees, at least in part, was to tighten the circumference around that which gave life, namely the law of God and ritual observance. Jesus' answer was also to observe the law, but his observation of the law went in the other direction. For in emphasizing the law's demands for justice and mercy, he showed that the circle in which life is found is ever growing larger. In the setting for the little parables that we have this morning, it is this issue of constricting or expanding the circle that is at stake. The immediate issue is table fellowship. The Pharisees say that it should be restricted to those persons who observe the law, especially in matters of ritual purity. They are upset by Jesus eating with tax collectors and sinners, persons who break the law by collecting tax for Rome and by going against the covenant with God in many other ways. So Jesus tells a story, and then another story. And each story deals with something that is lost. In the case of the first, it is a sheep that wanders off. In the case of the second, it is a coin that falls and rolls into the darkness. Through the centuries since he told these stories, people have wondered at the excess of action taken in each one. For in the first, the shepherd leaves a flock which is worth 99 times the value of the one sheep that has strayed. And in the second, the woman uses expensive oil to light the lamp to look for the coin, when she could have waited until daybreak to look for it. But logic or likelihood is never the point in Jesus' stories. It is the theme that is the point. And the theme in these little stories is that which is lost is worth pursuing, even at great cost to the pursuer. The sheep and the coin weren't what Jesus was really talking about. They were just images pulled out of daily life to bring his listeners along. What Jesus was directing his listeners to was the people that were lost. And within the context of his speaking, those people were not just the tax collectors and sinners as people lost to the law, but the tax collectors and sinners as people lost to the society of other people. For in condemning these people as sinners, the Pharisees wrote them off as human beings. What Jesus does is redefine for them the circumference of God's people. It even includes those people who turn away from what the religious authorities teach as the law of God. The real loss that Jesus is underscoring is that of people to each other. And that is the point at which this gospel passage addresses us. Today is the 21st commemoration of the loss of lives in the terrorist attacks on 9/11. But there are other losses that many of us are noting as well. The loss of tolerance of difference, the loss of commitment to the common good. There is so much at stake. How are we going to live when we are losing life as we knew it? Are we going to cinch the circle of community ever tighter? Or are we going to widen that circle with justice and mercy? God seems to think that which is lost is worth pursuing. The question is, do we?
I have seen Jesus
have been listening to a spiritual offering from Trinity Episcopal Church located on Schuyler Street in Boonville. We're glad to be part of your day, and we invite you to join us in person for our weekly service at 9 o'clock Sunday mornings.